I'm Sophia Hartfield, 32 years old, and I was elbow deep in a dumpster behind a foreclosed mansion in Redmond, Washington, when my life changed forever. A woman in a designer suit approached me while I held a broken chair leg, my hands black with grime. "Excuse me, are you Sophia Hartfield?" she asked. I was 3 months homeless, selling trash furniture to survive, and my ex-husband's voice still echoed in my head. "Nobody's going to want a broke homeless woman like you." The woman smiled. "My name is Victoria Chen. I'm an attorney. You just inherited $47 million. 3 months earlier, I'd been middle class. I had a home in suburban Seattle, a marriage, and an architecture degree gathering dust in storage. My ex-husband Richard made it clear that working was unnecessary. He was 32 when we met, successful and charming. I was 21, final year at University of Washington's architecture program. My sustainable community center design had just won first place at the senior exhibition. Uncle Theodore, the man who'd raised me after my parents died, had been so proud. "You're going to change the world," he'd said. "Next year, you'll join my firm in New York. We'll make history together." Richard overheard that conversation. He introduced himself, complimented my work, asked me to dinner. Within 6 months we were engaged. Within 8, married. Uncle Theodore refused to attend. "You're making a mistake," he told me on the phone. "That man doesn't want a partner. He wants a trophy. You're choosing to lock yourself in a cage." I'd been furious, stupidly in love, 22 and certain I knew better. "You're just jealous because I'm choosing my own path," I'd shot back. His response haunted me for years. "No, I'm heartbroken because you're throwing away everything you worked for. But you're an adult. It's your life to waste." We never spoke again, not when I sent Christmas cards. Not when I called on his 80th birthday. Not when I desperately needed him most. Richard's control started small. He suggested I didn't need to apply for jobs right away. "Take time to settle into married life," he'd say. Then he discouraged me from taking the architectural licensing exam. "Why stress yourself?" When I tried freelancing from home, designing additions for neighbors, Richard would schedule last-minute trips to Napa or Portland, making it impossible to meet deadlines. Eventually, I stopped trying. My only rebellion was continuing education through online courses and architectural journals. When Richard traveled for work, I filled 17 notebooks with designs I'd never build, projects I'd never pitch, dreams existing only on paper. Richard found them once. "That's a cute hobby," he'd said dismissively, "but focus on keeping the house nice." We're having the Johnsons over for Sunday dinner. His family hosted Thanksgiving every year at their Beacon Hill townhouse in Seattle. His mother always introduced me as Richard's wife who went to school for architecture, her voice dripping with performative pity, like I'd studied interpretive dance instead of structural engineering. When I discovered his affair with his 24-year-old secretary, everything crumbled. The divorce was brutal. Richard had expensive lawyers from a downtown firm. I had legal aid and hope. Washington State is community property, but our prenup was ironclad. He kept everything purchased before our marriage, which was everything that mattered. The house, the cars, the savings accounts. I got a suitcase, and the knowledge that his lawyer had outmaneuvered mine at every turn. Richard's parting words still stung. "Good luck finding someone who'll want damaged goods." So I'd been surviving by dumpster diving behind foreclosed properties, finding furniture people abandoned, restoring pieces in a storage unit I rented for $80 a month, and selling them on Facebook Marketplace. I'd been sleeping in my car parked behind a Safeway, showering at a 24-hour gym. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Victoria gestured toward a black Mercedes. "Perhaps we could talk somewhere more comfortable." I looked down at myself, filthy jeans and a ripped sweatshirt. "I'm not exactly Mercedes ready." She smiled. "You're the sole heir to a $50 million estate. The car can handle dust." $50 million. The number didn't compute. Victoria handed me a folder as we drove. "Your uncle left you his Manhattan residence, his Ferrari collection, investment properties across 3 states, and controlling share of Hartfield architecture. The firm is worth approximately $47 million. I stared at photos of the brownstone I'd seen in Architectural Digest. 5 stories of Victorian elegance, mixed with modern innovation in the West Village. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. "He disowned me 10 years ago." Victoria's expression softened. "Mr. Hartfield never removed you from his will. You were always his sole beneficiary. However, there is one condition. My stomach dropped. What condition? She met my eyes. You must take over as CEO of Hartfield Architecture within 30 days and maintain the position for at least 1 year. If you refuse or fail, everything goes to the American Institute of Architects. I laughed bitterly. I haven't worked a single day as an architect. I graduated at 21, married at 22. My husband thought my education was a cute hobby. Victoria's voice was quiet. Mr. Hartfield hoped you'd eventually return to architecture. This is his way of giving you that chance. I looked at the folder, at photos of the life I'd abandoned for a man who'd thrown me away. I'll do it, I said. When do we leave? The Manhattan brownstone took my breath away. Margaret, Uncle Theodore's housekeeper, stood at the door. She was in her 60s now, silver-haired and warm. Miss Hartfield, I took care of you after your parents passed. You were 15 in Dottler, so heartbroken. Welcome home, dear girl. I remembered her vaguely, a kind woman who'd made sure I ate, who'd found me crying in Theodore's study after my mother's funeral. Your uncle never stopped hoping you'd come back, Margaret said, leading me upstairs. He had the 5th floor converted into a studio for you 8 years ago. I stopped walking. 8 years ago? But we weren't speaking. Margaret's smile was sad. Mr. Theodore never stopped believing you'd come home eventually. He said you were too talented to stay buried forever. He kept this space ready for when you found your way back. The 5th floor was a designer's dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the village, massive drafting tables, expensive computer setup, drawers filled with pristine supplies. On one wall, my college exhibition sketch was pinned to a bulletin board. The sustainable community center that had won first place, the one Uncle Theodore had been so proud of. I touched it gently, tears blurring my vision. The edges were yellowed, but the lines were still sharp. He'd kept it for a decade. The first board meeting was exactly as hostile as I'd expected. 8 senior partners sat around a polished conference table, all looking at me like an unwelcome intruder. A man in his 50s named Carmichael leaned back in his chair. With all due respect, miss, Hartfield has never worked a day in this industry. This decision shows Theodore wasn't thinking clearly in his final months. I pulled out one of my 17 notebooks. Actually, Mr. Carmichael, my uncle was thinking perfectly clearly. He knew this firm needed fresh vision, not the same old guard clinging to past glory while the industry evolves around them. I slid the notebook across the table. This is a sustainable mixed-use development I designed 3 years ago, while my husband was at a conference in Chicago. Rain gardens, green roofs, parametric facade design, passive solar optimization. I have 16 more notebooks like this. 10 years of designs created in secret because my ex-husband thought architecture was a cute hobby that distracted me from keeping his house clean. Carmichael flipped through it, his expression carefully neutral. But other board members leaned in. A woman named Patricia spoke up. Even if your designs show promise, running a firm requires business acumen, client relationships, project management. You lack practical experience. I nodded. You're absolutely right. Which is why I'll rely heavily on the existing team, particularly Jacob Sterling. I looked at the senior partner who'd been quietly observing. I'm not here to pretend I know everything. I'm here to learn, to lead, and to honor my uncle's legacy while bringing new ideas. If you can't handle working for someone who wants to push forward instead of maintaining comfortable mediocrity, you're welcome to leave. My first major test came 2 weeks later. The Anderson project was a cutting-edge Seattle headquarters for a tech billionaire. Sustainable, statement-making, exactly what Hartfield architecture was known for. I'd spent 3 weeks on the design with our engineers. The building would breathe, collecting rainwater, optimizing light with smart glass, its green roof supporting native species that attracted pollinators. At 9:45 on presentation morning, I arrived to find my laptop missing from my locked office. Carmichael appeared in the doorway holding it. Found this in the break room. Someone must have moved it. I opened the laptop and my stomach dropped. The presentation file was corrupted. Slides jumbled, images missing, renderings replaced with error messages. I had 30 seconds to decide. Panic, postpone, admit defeat, or do what Theodore would have done. Actually, I said, closing the laptop with a smile, let's do this differently. Mr. Anderson, you said you wanted a building that tells a story. Let me tell you that story. I moved to the whiteboard and started sketching. My hand moved with confidence, built over 10 years of secret practice. I drew the building's silhouette, explained how the shape was inspired by the Cascade Mountain landscape, visible from the site, how every angle had purpose. Traditional architecture treats buildings as static objects, I said, sketching details with colored markers Jacob handed me. But your headquarters will be dynamic, alive. In summer, the smart glass darkens automatically, reducing cooling costs by 40%. In winter, it opens to maximize passive solar heating. The parametric facade pattern is generated by algorithms analyzing Seattle's rainfall data, turning weather into art. By the time I finished 45 minutes later, the whiteboard was covered in comprehensive representation of my vision. Raw, honest, clearly genuine passion. Anderson stood, examining the board closely. This is exactly what I wanted. Someone who understands buildings as living systems. When can you start? After they left, having agreed to terms immediately, Jacob was grinning. That was extraordinary. But someone corrupted your files deliberately. This was sabotage. I nodded. I know. It doesn't matter. Carmichael wanted me to fail. Instead, I showed everyone I don't need fancy presentations. The work speaks for itself. That evening, I called an emergency board meeting with Victoria as legal counsel. Our IT department had traced the file modifications to Carmichael's computer. He resigned the next morning. The company bought out his 30% stake at fair market value. But the real discovery came when Margaret found a leather-bound journal behind Theodore's architecture books. Your uncle kept a diary. Many entries are about you. The journal covered 15 years, from when I first lived with him to weeks before his death. One entry stopped me cold. March 15th, 10 years ago. Sophia married Richard Foster today. I refused to attend. Margaret says I'm being stubborn and cruel. Maybe I am, but I can't watch someone I raised walk into a cage with her eyes open. All I can do now is wait and hope she finds her way back. Another entry, dated 8 years ago. Started building the studio on the 5th floor today. Margaret thinks I'm foolish preparing a space for someone who might never come home, but I need to believe she will. The studio is my act of faith. The final entry, written 8 weeks before he died. I'm dying faster than expected. Pain is considerable, but I'm content. Victoria has instructions to find Sophia after I'm gone. The rest is up to her. She'll either take the challenge or find her own path. Either way, she'll be free. That's all I ever wanted. The Hartfield Fellowship launched 3 months after I took over. We selected 12 students from 300 applications, offering $45,000 annual stipends plus housing vouchers. Emma Rodriguez was 22, designing homeless shelters with community gardens. My family didn't understand why I wanted to study architecture instead of nursing. She told me nervously on her first day. I smiled. Let me guess. They said it was a nice hobby but not a real career. She nodded. Because people who don't understand passion will always try to diminish it, I said. My ex-husband spent 10 years telling me my degree was a cute waste of time. Don't let anyone make you small for dreaming big. The program was demanding, but by November, Emma's community shelter design had attracted attention from a Brooklyn nonprofit. They wanted Hartfield to lead the project with Emma, as primary designer under supervision. 6 months later, Marcus Chen, CEO of a rival firm, made an unexpected offer. $300 million for complete acquisition of Hartfield architecture. The board gathered in the conference room, Patricia presenting the terms. Given your 51% ownership, the decision is yours, Sophia. I didn't hesitate. No. Theodore didn't leave me this company, so I could sell it to someone who represents everything he fought against. Patricia smiled. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say. Theodore included a provision in his will. If you rejected any substantial acquisition offer, you'd receive an additional trust he established. $30 million, unrestricted, for understanding that some legacies can't be bought. She handed me a velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple band with architectural blueprints etched into the metal. The note read, Sophia, this ring belonged to your great-aunt Eleanor, who was an architect in the 1950s when women were actively discouraged from the profession. She faced barriers you can't imagine, but she never compromised her vision. Build bravely, live boldly, and never let anyone make you small again. I'm proud of you. That evening, Jacob found me in the studio. He pulled out a small box and opened it. Inside was an engagement ring. Sophia Hartfield. I'm not doing this because of any timeline or test. I'm doing this because every day with you is better than the day before, and I want a lifetime of days watching you change the world. Will you marry me? I looked at the ring, then at Jacob, then at the studio Theodore had built 8 years ago, hoping I'd return. Yes, I said through tears. Absolutely yes. The wedding happened 18 months after I'd climbed out of that dumpster. Patricia walked me down the aisle in Theodore's rooftop garden. Jacob's vows were simple. Sophia, you taught me that partnership means celebrating each other's strength, not competing with it. I promise to always see you, challenge you, and believe you're capable of the impossible. My vows were harder without crying. Jacob, 18 months ago, I was convinced nobody would want me, that I was broken beyond repair. You didn't just prove that wrong, you made me understand I was never broken. I was just waiting to find someone who saw my cracks as places where light could enter. We used the $30 million trust to launch a nationwide public architecture initiative. Libraries, community centers, public spaces designed with the same care usually reserved for luxury projects. Emma led the design for the Philadelphia Community Library, her first project as lead architect. 5 years after taking over Hartfield, I gave the commencement address at my architecture school. When I graduated, I had a degree, a dream, an absolute certainty about my future. Within a year, I'd abandoned all of it for a man who needed me small. For 10 years, I disappeared into a life that wasn't mine. But here's what I learned. You can't actually lose yourself. You can misplace yourself temporarily, but your essential self remains, waiting for you to remember. That evening, I returned to the estate rooftop where this chapter began. Jacob was in the studio working on sketches for a Detroit children's museum. Margaret had dinner waiting. I stood in Theodore's garden, looking at the city stretched below, full of buildings designed by people with dreams and determination. I thought about the woman who'd climbed out of that dumpster, believing she'd lost everything. I wished I could tell her the most important thing. She was already everything she needed to be. She just needed time and space to remember it. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt small, dismissed, or written off, drop a comment sharing your own comeback story. And subscribe, because transformation isn't a one-time event. It's a daily choice to build yourself back, stronger than before. You're already everything you need to be. You just need to remember.